Hi everyone. In this lecture, I will add a security configuration to the web client. I will implement a basic authentication here, but in the next lectures, I will replace the authentication and authorization parts with OAuth and OpenID Connect protocols. Now let's create a class Web Security Config under a new package config in the Elastic Query web client. I will annotate this class with configuration and enable web security annotations. Then I will extend web security configure adapter class. Here first I will inject the user config data configuration class to be able to obtain the user credentials in this class. Then override configure method with HTTP security parameter. This method comes from the web security configure adapter class. Here I will add HTTP basic and allow index page by using a slash in end matchers and using permit all methods. And then use slash star star with has role methods to authorize all paths with a role user. Apart from the authorization setting, I will include full authentication for any request here, which means do not allow anonymous users but allow for remember me user. So the difference between full authentication and authentication is that full authentication allows to use remember me option. Note that I didn't configure logout functionality here, although we have a logout button on the front end. This is because HTTP basic authentication doesn't have an automatic logout functionality. It requires to do some tricks to log out the user. And since this basic authentication is temporary, and I will implement OAuth protocol in the coming sections, I will leave logout functionality to there. Then I will override another configure method here with authentication manager builder parameter and use the user config data to set in-memory user credentials and roles. As I did in the query service security config, I am adding a bcrypt password encoder here instead of using plain text password, so that I won't use and keep the plain text password in memory. Then let's add another configuration, this time to configure Spring Web Client. Again, this one will be annotated with configuration annotation. I will then inject Elastic Query Web Client config to use web client inner object and user config data. And then create a method to create bean for web client builder. Note that I will create a web client builder as a bean instead of the web client directly, because this is required to use load balanced option, which works only on a builder instead of using the web client directly. Here we will see the usage of qualifier annotation, as I use a qualifier in the bean annotation so that I can use that name web client builder with qualifier annotation to pick up this builder implementation when injecting it. Here I will set the configuration for web client. First, set user information for basic authentication using exchange filter functions basic authentication method. And then I'll set base URL and default content type and accept type by reading it from the configuration. I don't need to, but here I will also set TCP client explicitly to show you the options that you can override. Now I'm going to create a Reactor client HTTP connector for this, and create a private method that will return TCP client object for our web client. I will use TCP client create methods from project Reactor library and set connect, read and write timeout values explicitly. Finally, I will use the codecs method to set the max in-memory size. Otherwise, I would get an error when we browse large data on browser. Let's set this value to 10 MB as defined in the configuration. Now I can run our web client and see if we can reach the application on browser using localhost 8184 port and with the context path Elastic Query Web Client. For now, I only need config server before running the web client. So let's run the config server first. After running the web client, let's log in with the user that we have defined in the configuration. Then I can try to search using the search button. It will return a single result because I have mocked the results, as you can remember. Alright, security and web configurations are ready. Now we are ready to implement web clients, and I will do that in the next lecture.